Welcome to Billerica Public Library's Book Buzz, August publications. Enjoy as I talk about some great August releases that were purchased by Billerica Public Library and the Merrimack Consortium. The Billerica Public Library staff hopes that you will enjoy listening to these exciting and interesting books that you can borrow from our library. Our first genre is contemporary fiction. Damnation Spring by Ash Davidson. For generations, Rich Gunderson's family has chopped a livelihood out of the redwood forest along California's rugged coast. Now, Rich and his wife Colleen are raising their own young son near Damnation Cove, a swath of ancient redwoods on which Rich's employer, Sanderson Timber Company, plans to make a killing. In 1977, with most of the forest cleared or protected, a grove like Damnation and beyond its 24/7 ridge is a logger's dream. It's dangerous work. Rich has already lived decades longer than his father, killed on the job. Rich wants better for his son Chubb, so when the opportunity arises to buy 24/7 Ridge, costing them all the savings they squirreled away for their growing family, he grabs it, unbeknownst to Colleen, because the reality is their family isn't growing. Colleen has lost several pregnancies and she isn't alone. As a midwife, Colleen has seen it with her own eyes. For decades, herbicides the logging company uses were considered harmless, but Colleen is no longer so sure. What if these miscarriages aren't isolated strokes of bad luck? As mudslides take clear out hillsides and salmon vanishes from creeks, her search for answers threatens to unravel not just Rich's plan for the 24/7, but their marriage too, dividing a town that lives and dies on timber along the way. I Kissed a Girl by Janet Alexander. Lila Silver's young actress who dreams of climbing out of a B-list stardom. She's been cast as the lead in what could be her breakout performance. But what if she wants to prove herself to everyone who ever doubted her? She's going to need major help along the way. Noah Berman may be a brilliant makeup artist and a special effects whiz kid, but cracking into the union is more difficult than she imagined. Keeping everyone happy is a full-time job, and she's already run ragged. And yet, when the beautiful star she's been secretly crushing on admits to fears of her own, Noah vows to do everything in her power to help Lila shine like never before. Long hours, exhausting work, no problem. Together they can take the world by storm. But can the connection forged over long hours in makeup chair ever hope to survive the glare of the spotlight? Last Chance Library by Freya Sampson. Lonely librarian June Jones has never left the sleepy English village where she grew up. Shy and reclusive, the 30-year-old would rather spend her time buried in books than venture out into the world. But when her library is threatened with closure, June is forced to emerge from behind the shelves to save the heart of her community and the place that holds the dearest memories of her mother. Joining a band of eccentric yet dedicated locals in a campaign to keep the library, June opens herself up to other people for the first time since her mother died. It just so happens that her old school friend Alex Chen is back in town and willing to lend a helping hand. The kind-hearted lawyer's feelings for her are obvious to everyone but June, who won't believe that anyone could ever care for her in that way. To save the place in the books that means so much to her, June must finally make some changes in her life. For once, she's determined not to go down without a fight. And maybe in fighting for her cherished library, June can save herself too. The People We Keep by Allison Larkin. Little River, New York, 1994. April is living in a motorless motorhome that her father won in a poker game. Failing out of school, picking up shifts at Margot's Diner, she's left fending for herself in a town where she's never quite felt at home. When she borrows her neighbor's car to perform at an open mic night, she realizes her life could be much bigger than where she came from. After a fight with her dad, April packs her stuff and leaves for good, setting off on a journey to find a life that's all hers. Driving without a chosen destination, she stops to rest in Ithaca. Her only plan is to survive, but as she looks for work, she finds a kindred sense of belonging at Cafe de Cadence, the local coffee shop. Still, somehow it doesn't make sense to her that life could be this easy. The more she falls in love with her friends in Ithaca, the more she can't shake the feeling that she'll hurt them the way she's been hurt. As April moves through the world, meeting people who feel like home, she chronicles her life in songs she writes and discovers that where she came from doesn't dictate who she has to be. The Reading List by Sarah Adams. Widower Musker lives in a quiet life in Wembley in West London after losing his beloved wife. He shops every Wednesday, goes to temple, and worries about his granddaughter Priya, who hides in her room reading whilst he spends his evenings watching nature documentaries. Alicia is a bright but anxious teenager working at the local library for the summer when she discovers a crumpled up piece of paper in the back of To Kill a Mockingbird. It's a list of novels that she'd never heard of before. Intrigued and a little bored with her slow job at the checkout desk, she impulsively decides to read every book on the list, one after the other. As each story gives up its magic, the book transports Alicia from the painful reality she's facing at home. When Muska arrives at the library, desperate to forge a connection with his bookworm granddaughter, Alicia passes along the reading list, hoping that it will be a lifeline for him too. Slowly, the shared books create a connection between two lonely souls, as fiction helps them escape their grief and everyday troubles and find joy again. We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang. When 29-year-old Sunday Brennan wakes up in a Los Angeles hospital, bruised and battered after a drunk driving accident she caused, she swallows her pride and goes home to her family in New York. But it's not easy. She deserted them all and her high school sweetheart 5 years before with little explanation, and they've got questions. Sunday is determined to rebuild her life back on the East Coast, even if it does mean tiptoeing around resentful brothers and an ex-fiance. The longer she stays, however, the more she realizes they need her just as much as she needs them. When a dangerous man from her past brings her family's pub business to the brink of financial ruin, the only way to is to upend all their secrets, secrets that have damaged the family for generations and will threaten everything they know about their lives. In the aftermath, the Brennan family is forced to confront painful mistakes and ultimately find a way forward together. Our second genre is historical fiction. Bookseller's Secret by Michelle Gable. In 1942 London, Nancy Mitford is worried about more than air raids and German spies. Still recovering from a devastating loss, the once sparkling bright young thing is estranged from her husband. Her allowance has been cut and she's given up her writing career. On top of this, her five beautiful but infamous sisters continue making headlines with their controversial politics. Eager for distraction and desperate for income, Nancy jumps at a chance to manage the Haywood Hill bookshop while the owner is away at war. Between the shop's brisk business and the literary salon she hosts for her eccentric friends, Nancy's life seems on the upswing. But when a mysterious French officer insists that she has a story to tell, Nancy must decide if picking up the pen again and revealing all is worth the price she might be forced to pay. 80 years later, Haywood Hill is abuzz with the hunt for a lost wartime manuscript written by Nancy Mitford. For one woman desperately in need of a change, the search will reveal not only a new side to Nancy, but even more a surprising link between the past and present. The Riviera House by Natasha Lester. Paris, 1939. The Nazis think Elaine can't understand German. They're wrong. They think she's merely cataloging art in the Louvre, and unaware they're stealing national treasures for their private collections. They have no idea she's carefully decoding their notes and smuggling information to the resistance. But Elaine is playing a dangerous game. Does she dare trust the man she once loved with her secrets, or will he only betray her once again? She has no way to know for certain until a trip to a stunning home on the French Riviera brings a whole new level of peril. Present day. Wanting to forget the tragedy that has left her life in shambles, Remy Lang heads to a home she mysteriously inherited on the Riviera. While working on her vintage fashion business, she discovers a catalog of the artwork stolen during World War II and is shocked to see a painting that hung on her childhood bedroom wall. Who is her family really? And does the Riviera house hold more secrets than Remy is ready to face? The Showgirl by Nicola Harrison. It's 1927 when Olive moves from Minneapolis to New York City determined to become a star in the Ziegfeld Follies. Extremely talented as a singer and dancer, it takes every bit of perseverance to finally make it on stage. And once she does, all the glamour and excitement is everything she imagined and more, even worth all the sacrifices she had to make along the way. Then she meets Archie Carmichael, handsome, wealthy, the only man she's ever met who seems to accept her modern ways, her independent nature, and passion for success. But once she accepts his proposal of marriage, he starts to change his tune. And Olive must decide if she's willing to reveal a devastating secret and sacrifice the life she loves for a man she loves. Our third genre is fantasy. Feral Creatures by Kara Jane Buxton. When the world last checked in with its favorite Cheeto addict, the planet had been overrun by flesh-hungry beasts, and nature had restarted reclaiming her territory from humankind. St. the intrepid crow, alongside his bloodhound bestie, Dennis, had set about saving pets that had become trapped in their homes after humanity went the way of the dodo. That is, dear reader, until St. stumbled upon something so rare and so precious that he vowed to do everything in his power to safeguard what could quite literally be humanity's last hope for survival. But in a wild world plagued by prejudiced animals, feather raising environments, new threats so terrifying they make zombies look like baby bunnies, and horrendous threat of cheesy snacks, what's a crow to do? She Wouldn't Change a Thing by Sarah Eckler. A second chance is the last thing she wants. When 39-year-old Maria wakes up in her 17-year-old body, she doesn't know how she got there. All she does know is she has to get back to her home in Benville, Mississippi, to her job as a successful psychiatrist, and most importantly, to her husband, daughters, and unborn son. But she also knows that in only a few weeks, a devastating tragedy will strike her husband, a tragedy that will lead to their meeting each other. Can she change time and still keep what it's given her? Paper and Blood by Kevin Hearn. There's only one Al McBarris. Though other Scotsmen may have dramatic mustaches and a taste for fancy cocktails, Al also has a unique talent. He's a master of ink and sigil magic. In his gifted hands, paper and pen can work wondrous spells. But Al isn't quite alone. He is part of a global network of sigil agents who use their power to protect the world from mysterious gods and strange monsters. So when a fellow agent disappears under sinister circumstances in Australia, Al leaves behind the cozy pubs and the cafes of Glasgow and travels to the ranges in Victoria to solve the mysteries. The trail to his colleagues begins to pile up with bodies at alarming speed. So Al is grateful his friends have come to help, especially Nadia, his accountant who moonlights as a pit fighter, together with whiskey-loving hobgoblin known as Buck Foy and the ancient druid Atticus O'Sullivan, along with his dogs Obian and Starbuck. Al and Nadia will face down the wildest wonders of Australia and the supernatural world can throw at them and confront a legendary monster not seen in centuries. Requiem of Silence by L. Penelope. Queen Jesmanda is determined to push the unification forward against growing opposition and economic strife. But the true father is not finished with Eliza, and he may not be acting alone. He has built a powerful army, an army that cannot be killed, an army that can only be stopped by Nether Song and the help of friends and foes of Alyssa alike to stop it. Former assassin Kyle will discover that she is not the only never singer. She will need to join the others to harness a power that can save or end Eliza. But time is of the essence, and they may not be ready by the time the true father strikes. Sisterhood Noah Zelly will go to the reaches of the living world to unlock a secret that could save the kingdoms. When armies meet in the battlefield, the new world will be forged, whether by the hands of gods or men remains to be seen. The Godstone by Violetta Milan. Verna has been a working practitioner, using the magic of healing ever since she graduated from the White Court and left the city to live in the outer modes. When one of her patients, Alan, is summoned to the city to execute the final testament of a distant cousin, she agrees to help him. Alan suspects the White Court wants to access his cousin's practitioner's vault. Alan can't ignore the summons. He knows that the vault holds an artifact so dangerous he can't allow it to be freed. Brenna quickly figures out that there is no cousin, that Alan himself is the missing practitioner. The legendary Xander, rumored to have been a godstone with which he once almost destroyed the world, sealing away the godstone left Alan powerless and ill, and he needs Brenna to help him deal with the possible sudden effect before someone else finds it and uses it. Along the way, they encounter Evelyn, an old friend whom Alan once betrayed. Convinced that Alan has not changed and intends to use Freda to recover the Godstone and with it all his power. Evelyn joins them to keep Freda safe and help her destroy the artifact. Our fourth genre is suspense and mystery. A Familiar Sight by Brianna Lavsky. Psychologist and criminologist Dr. Gretchen White is a specialist in antisocial personality disorders and violent crimes. She's helped solve enough prominent cases for Detective Patrick Shaughnessy that her own history is often overlooked. Gretchen is an admitted sociopath, once suspected of killing her aunt. Shaughnessy still thinks Gretchen got away with murder. It's not going to happen again. With a high-profile new case lands on Shaughnessy's desk, it seems open and shut. Remorseless teenager Viola Kent is accused of killing her mother. Amid stories of childhood horrors and Viola's cruel manipulations, the bad seed has already been found guilty by the public. But Gretchen might be seeing something in Viola that no one else does herself. If Viola is a scapegoat, then who really did it, and what are they hiding? To find the truth, Gretchen must enter a void that is not only dark and cold-blooded, but also frighteningly familiar. Dark Roads by Chevy Stevens. The Coal Creek Highway stretches close to 500 miles through British Columbia's rugged wilderness to the west coast. Isolated and vast, it has become a prime hunting ground for predators. For decades, young women traveling the road have gone missing. Motorists and hitchhikers, those passing through or living in one of the small towns scattered along the region, have fallen prey time and again. And no killer or abductor who has stalked the highway has ever been brought to justice. Haley McBride calls Coal Creek home. Her father taught her to respect nature, how to live and survive off the land, and never to travel the highway alone. Now he's gone, leaving her a teenage orphan in the care of her aunt, whose police officer husband uses his badge as a means to bully and control Haley. Overwhelmed by the grief and forbidden to work, socialize, or date, Haley vanishes into the mountainous terrain, hoping everyone will believe she's left town. Rumors spread that she was taken by the highway killer, who claimed another victim over the summer. 1 year later, Beth arrives in Coal Creek, where her sister Amber lived and where she was murdered. Estranged from her parents and seeking closure, Beth takes a waitressing job at the local diner. Just as Amber did, desperate to understand what happened to her and why, but Beth's search for answers puts a target on her back and threatens to reveal the truth behind Haley's disappearance. In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. 10 years after graduation, Jessica Miller has planned her triumphant return to her southern elite Duquette University, down to the envious whispers that are sure to follow in her wake. Everyone is going to see the girl she wants them to see, confident, beautiful, and different, not the girl she was when she left campus, back when Heather Shelby's murder fractured everything, including the tight bond linking the six friends she'd been closest to since freshman year. But not everyone is ready to move on. Not everyone left Duquette 10 years ago, and not everyone can let Heather's murder go unsolved. Someone is determined to trap the real killer, to make the guilty pay. When the six friends are reunited, they will be forced to confront what happened that night and the year's worth of secrets each of them would do anything to keep hidden. Mrs. March by Virginia Fieto. George March's latest novel is a smash. No one could be prouder than his dutiful wife, Mrs. March, who revels in his accolades. A careful creature of routine and decorum, she lives a controlled existence on the Upper East Side until one morning, when the shopkeeper of her favorite pasterie suggests that her husband's latest protagonist, a detestable character named Joanna, is based on Mrs. March herself. Clutching her ostrich-lettered pocketbook and mint-colored glove, she flees the shop. What could have merit this humiliation? The one casual remark robs Mrs. March of the belief that she knew everything about her husband and herself, thus sending her on an increasingly paranoid journey that begins within the pages of a book. While snooping in George's office, Mrs. March finds a newspaper clipping about a missing woman. Did George have anything to do with her disappearance? He's been going on a lot of hunting trips up north with his editor lately, leaving Mrs. March all alone at night with her tormented thoughts and the cockroaches that have suddenly started to appear and the strange breathing noises. As she begins to decode her husband's secrets, her deafening anxiety and fierce determination threaten everyone in her wake, including her stoic housekeeper, Martha, and her son Jonathan, whom she loves so profoundly when she remembers to love him at all. The Last Mona Lisa by Jonathan Sanlofer, August 1911. The Mona Lisa is stolen by Vincent Perugia. Exactly what happens in the 2 years before its recovery is a mystery. Many replicas of the Mona Lisa exist, and more than one historian has wondered if the painting now returned to the Louvre is a fake, switched in 1911. Present day. Art professor Luke Peroni digs for the truth behind his most famous ancestor, Perugia. His search attracts an Interpol detective with something to prove, an unfamiliar but curiously helpful woman. Soon, Luke tumbles deep into the world of art and forgery and a land of obsession and danger. The Madness of the Crowds by Louise Penny. Time and again, as New Year approaches, the charge is leveled against Amin Gamach. It started innocently enough. While the residents of the Quebec village of Three Pines takes advantage of the deep snow to ski and toboggan, to drink hot chocolate in the bistro and share meals together, the chief inspector finds his holiday with his family interrupted by a simple request. He's asked to provide security for what promises to be a non-event. A visiting professor of statistics will be giving a lecture at a nearby university. While he is perplexed as to why the head of homicide for Quebec would be assigned this task, it sounds easy enough. That is, until Gamache starts looking into Professor Abigail Robinson and discovers an agenda so repulsive he begs the university to cancel the lecture. They refuse, citing academic freedom, and accuse Camacho of censorship and intellectual cowardice. Before long, Professor Robinson's views start seeping into conversations, spreading and infecting, so that the truth and fact, reality and delusion are so confused it's near impossible to tell them apart. Discussions become debates, debates become arguments which turn into fights, as sides are declared and a madness takes hold. Abigail Robinson promises that if you follow her, all will be well, but not Gamache and his team know for everyone. When a murder is committed, it falls to Amon, his second in command, Jean Guy, and their team to investigate the crime as well as this extraordinary popular delusion. Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno Garcia. 1970s Mexico City. Maddie is a secretary who lives for one thing, the latest issue of Secret Romance. While student protests and political unrest consume the city, Maddie escapes into stories of passion and danger. Her next door neighbor, Leonora, a beautiful art student, seems to have a life of intrigue and romance that Maddie envies. When Leonora disappears under suspicious circumstances, Maddie finds herself searching for the missing woman and journeying deeper into Lenora's secret life of student radicals and descenders. Meanwhile, someone else is also looking for Lenora at the behest of his boss, a shadowy figure who commands goon squads dedicated to squashing political activists. Elvis is an eccentric criminal who longs to escape his own life. He loathes violence and loves old movies and rock and roll. But as Elvis searches for the missing woman, he watches Maddie from a distance and comes to regard her as a kindred spirit who shares his love of music and the unspoken loneliness of his heart. Now, as Maddie and Elvis come closer to discovering the truth behind Lenora's disappearance, they can no longer escape the danger that threatens to consume their lives. With hitmen, government agents, Russian spies, all aiming to protect Leonora's secrets at gunpoint. Our last genre is biographies and memoirs. Huss Girls by Holly Ma Marcus. As a child, Husses consumed Holly Ma's imagination. When she wasn't around Husses, she was pretending to be one, cantering on two legs, hands poised to hold invisible reins. To her classmates, girls like Holly Ma were known as Huss Girls, weird and overzealous, absent from the social worlds of their peers. Decades later, when memes about Huss Girl energy began appearing across social media, Holly Ma reluctantly recognized herself. The jokes image girls as blinkered as carriage ponies, oblivious to the mockery behind their backs. The stereotypical Huss girl is also white, thin, rich, straight, a daughter of privilege. Yet, so many riders don't fit this narrow, damaging ideal and relate to Husses in profound ways that include regret as well as unbridled passion and devotion. The Sisters of Auschwitz by Roxanne Van Iperen. During the Second World War II, Jewish sisters Jannie and Leanne ran one of the largest hideaways in the Netherlands, the High Nest, a villa in the Gouy area. While the last remaining Jews are being hunted in the Netherlands, the lives of thousands of hideaways kept going for better or for worse, right under the noses of their National Socialist neighbors. Eventually, the nest is exposed, and the Beja family put on one of the last transports to Auschwitz along with Anne Frank family. The Last Nomad by Sergei Sadsal. Born in Somalia, a spare daughter in a large family, Sergei was sent at age 6 to live with their nomadic grandmother in the desert. The last of her family to learn this once common way of life, Sal found herself chasing warthogs, climbing hills, herding goats, moving constantly in search of water and grazing lands with her nomadic family. For Sal, though the desert was a harsh place threatened by drought, predators, and enemies, it also held beauty, innovation, centuries of tradition, and a way for the young surfy girl to learn courage and independence from a fearless group of relatives. Sal grew to love the freedom of roaming with her animals and the powerful feelings of community found in nomadic rituals and the oral storytelling of her ancestors.